On behalf of CUTS International, our partners, let me welcome all of you to today's webinar on gender dimensions of trade facilitation, evidence from Bangladesh, Bhutan, India, and Nepal. This is part of a project which we are implementing with support from the Foreign, Commonwealth and Development Office of the United Kingdom, which was earlier known as the Department for International Development. We are implementing this project in 4 countries, as you know, and we have excellent partners and partnership in all these countries. We have Bangladesh Women Chamber and Commerce and Industry, represented by Mrs. Selima Ahmed, who is a speaker in today's webinar. We have Bhutan Media and Communications Institute. They are participating in today's webinar, and one of their advisors, Mrs. MANJU, she is a speaker in today's webinar. And we have South Asia Watch on Trade, Economics and Environment from Nepal. They are also participating in today's webinar, and one of their mentors, Dr. BINA PRADHAN, is a speaker in today's webinar. We also have other speakers. I am very pleased to see that Mrs. RUBA, RUMMANA, Professor BIBEK Roy Choudhury, ANOUSH from WTO in Geneva. They are going to participate and speak in today's webinar. So before I go into the substance of today's program, let me very briefly tell all of you about one particular logistic matter, is that we have kept everybody's microphone mute except the speakers, and there is a chat box. So if you have any questions, comments, observations that you want to share with us, please write down in that chat box. We intend to have, even if it is a brief, we intend to have an interaction towards the end of this program, at least for 15-20 minutes. But I'm sure that it will not be possible to address all your comments or observations. But I assure you that we are going to make note of them, and we're going to address them as we make progress in our work. So with this, and the second point is that we have a couple of presentations in today's webinar. I will request Anush to first make her presentation, and then I will request Mrs. Rummana to make her presentation. Both are brief, but very to the point. I have already read them. Then I will request our other speakers, Mrs. Ahmed, Mrs. Pradhan, Mrs. Giri, and then finally Professor BIBEK Roy Choudhury to place their thoughts on this subject. Now I'll say on the substance of this subject, I'll say 2 or 3 very brief points, because we are really keen to hear your thoughts. First is that when we started this work, at a very short span of time, within the first 2-3 months, we realized that we cannot look at gender dimensions of trade facilitation if we, and this is important, if we keep ourselves limited to the narrow definition of trade facilitation agreement, the definition or the provisions of that agreement. So very consciously we have taken a broad approach, not definitional approach, but broad perspective on trade facilitation. And from there we found that unless we have a positive agenda for women's economic empowerment through trade, we cannot discuss, we cannot think about gender dimensions of trade facilitation. And by a positive agenda, I mean something like, let's say, the Bhumiputra agenda of Malaysia. Once at one point of time they had that. The black economic empowerment in South Africa. So those kind of positive agenda is very much required for various reasons, but for the simple reason that we found not only the female labor force participation is low in our part of the world, but also their participation in trading activities is much lower. And the reason for that, one of the main reasons for that, is absence of information dissemination. Not absence of information, absence of information dissemination. So unless we have a specific program for encouraging women entrepreneurs for their engagement, increased, enhanced engagement with trading activities, both internal and external, it is not possible for us to look at the gender dimensions of trade facilitation in its broader perspective. And my third and final point would be, it's not just women entrepreneurs that we should focus on, but we have to, when you look at this subject in specific sectors, let's say textiles and clothing sector, it's not just women entrepreneurs. We have to look at the whole value chain. Yeah. About women's engagement, not just women owned or managed business, but women's engagement in economic activities, not just trading activities in narrow sense of the term. So this is the broader perspective which we have taken while implementing this project. This project is coming to an end in March next year, but we do hope that we are going to have a next phase, second phase. And I think this is the right time to discuss about these issues. And I'll end by saying this point. Yesterday we released a compendium of briefing papers which our experts, including some of them, are present here today. They have written on various dimensions, various aspects of this subject. And we have already started receiving feedback from many people. I mean, that this is one of the less researched areas. And it is very good that that's our work in partnership with many of you has contributed to the literature of this subject. Now, I will end by saying that one critical gap is the fact that we are yet to have a framework on the basis of which we can do much better work on gender dimensions of trade facilitation. We are trying to do that, but we are very pleased to see that our guest, our colleague, friend from WTO, ANOUSH, she is already doing it, and she is going to make a presentation on that. So with these brief remarks, let me first welcome and request ANOUSH to make her presentation. So we are going to operate it from here, the screen sharing and all those technical matters. You just have to say next slide.
Okay.
Over to you, ANOUSH. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Good afternoon, everybody. So my name is ANOUSH BOGHOSSIAN, and I am actually driving the work on trade and gender in the WTO since 2016. And actually, the BBIN region and the South Asian region is very dear to my heart. Last year, more or less at this time, I was actually traveling India and Nepal, meeting with many different women entrepreneurs, and it has enlightened me in a way which I cannot describe. It was really insightful. So I'm very honored and happy to participate in this event today. So my presentation will focus on, so we are on slide 2. Slide 2.
Next slide.
Yeah, perfect. So my presentation will focus on 3 points today. First of all, I will look at the situation of women entrepreneurs in the BBIN region with regards to trade facilitation. And during all this presentation, actually, I will showcase the results of a survey that we conducted in the WTO in South Asia and in the BBIN region in 2019. We interviewed more than 100 women entrepreneurs in the region, and we did this work in collaboration with SODEF, the South Asian Women Development Forum. So that will be my first point. The second point, I will look at what can be done to support women in trade facilitation and how the WTO can help. So next slide, please. You can just open all the slide, please, if you don't mind. Thank you. Perfect, thank you very much. So the situation of women entrepreneurs in the BBIN region with regards to trade facilitation, first of all, following the results of the survey we did, about 70% of women entrepreneurs are mostly in manufacture. So we can say that trade facilitation is quite crucial if they are or want to export. The second point I will make is that their intention for future exports is very high. About 73% of them responded that they would want to export in the future. And I will add one caveat here about the COVID-19. Actually, this survey was done in the middle of 2019, before the COVID crisis. And since then, we have instituted a dialogue between South Asian Women Entrepreneurs Associations at the regional level as well as at the national level. And we had the first session in June this year to understand how was COVID-19 impacted women entrepreneurs in the region. And actually, it was quite clear from this discussion that women are quite discouraged to go international. They said that most of them intended to focus on the domestic market. And so basically the pandemic has suspended or even stopped their export ambitions. However, the picture is not 100% gloomy. We've heard from women entrepreneurs from Nepal that were saying that some products are not for local market, that focusing on the domestic market is not enough. So, and there were, a lot of the women were looking at e-commerce to be able to enter international markets. So as I said, the picture is not 100% gloomy. A third point I would like to make is also that during the survey we did last year, women entrepreneurs have raised a number of trading difficulties in the region. So out of 11 trading difficulties they have identified, 6 actually are related to trade facilitation. So 40% of them had said that they have no clear instructions on custom requirements. 36% said they were actually facing delays in processing export permits and custom paperwork. 56% said they had difficulties in accessing import-export loans. And actually, in relation to that difficulty, they also have difficulty accessing trade finance overall, which is 70% of them said that. So they also have difficulties in accessing information on import-export issues, including tariffs. So almost half of them said so. And another difficulty they are facing, which is accessing information on national customs and tax regulation. It's about 20% of them. So all these difficulties, 6 out of 11 identified, are really related to trade facilitation. So given all this data, I mean, we can say that adequate trade facilitation policy can support women entrepreneurs in trade. And when I say adequate, I mean that we need to take their needs into consideration and removing the specific barriers they face as part of trade facilitation in particular. By the way, these figures are, that I gave are really from the BBIN region, not the South Asian region. So I've really focused the data on the BBIN region. So there are also other important challenges that prevent women entrepreneurs from trading internationally, and which are also direct or indirect trade facilitation costs. The size of the company, most of them are small. According to the survey we did, about 42% of the women entrepreneurs have less than 10 employees. They're also facing difficulties in finding and hiring skilled workers for 57% of them. They are also finding difficulties in accessing finance 40% of them. I would like to focus a little bit on this aspect, because actually there is a consequence to this difficult financial situation. Because of this difficult financial situation, they cannot afford simple export costs, such as investing in an IT system or in skilled staff to deal with customs issues or packaging and standards. So this has been made quite difficult because of these difficulties to have access to finance. And of course, the COVID-19 didn't help. It has actually exacerbated all these trade facilitation difficulties and trade facilitation costs. When women entrepreneurs in the region, actually, according to the discussion we had in June this year, is quite financially, I would say they are actually almost broke. There is a fund freeze. There is no more funds for them to invest in their companies because they had to pay for a lot of expenses without having access so much to the loan programs that are being set by governments. Of course, I mean, if they are excluded from those programs, it's not intentional, but actually, for example, in one of the BBIN country, the government set up a loan for SMEs specifically, and actually it is a 50-50 co-sharing. But women don't really have the financial assets or the collaterals to be able to be entering a loan 50-50 co-sharing, so they cannot pay the bank interest, so they cannot, de facto, they are kind of excluded from this kind of programs. And again, from the discussion we had with women entrepreneurs over the last few months, we can see that in the, let's say, first half of 2020, for example, in Bangladesh, about a vast majority of women SME owners have lost their businesses. So it's quite, when we see that, for example, 70% of women entrepreneurs own their businesses 100% in Bangladesh, so it's quite a big blow. If you can go to the next slide, please. Thank you. Just click one more. Yeah, thank you. So all this, I've set up the picture, but there are some things that we can do to help women in trade facilitation. And actually the WTO is currently working on detailed and concrete trade facilitation indicators for governments to integrate gender into their trade facilitation policies. So I've been building these indicators in 5 steps. If you could go to the next slide, please. Click one more. Yeah, perfect. Thank you very much. So the first step is obviously, the first thing would be to acquire a good and detailed understanding of the concrete hurdles that women are facing, women traders are facing, and also what are the concrete situations on the ground. The second step would be on the basis of this understanding to categorize the type of trade measures or trade policy measures that can be set up. So I can see, there are obvious 3 types of trade facilitation measures. You have measures that are taken upstream of the border, so pre-border. You have measures taken at the border, and you have measures taken downstream of the border, that is beyond the border. So I have a few examples of the kind of measures that could be set up as part of this category. So for example, for measures upstream of the border, just very simple, setting up simplified procedures for setting up a business, to have a commercial license, for requesting export license for women entrepreneurs. I know that some WTO members are already doing so. At the border, the obvious issue would be infrastructure. So it could be interesting for government to set up maybe some fast track lines for women entrepreneurs products to go through in a way which is more easier And then an example of a measure that would be going beyond the border would be evaluating and reviewing the policies with the involvement of women entrepreneurs associations and also informal cross-border traders. So it's just like a very, very, tiny examples. There are many others, but given the time, I'm not going to go through too many examples. So once you categorize the policy measures, then the step 3 would be categorizing the type of female traders. You have different types of female traders, and so any design of policies would have to address the specific needs of each group. And for example, I'm thinking informal cross-border traders would have very specific needs to be addressed in trade facilitation policies. The step 4 would be, of course, identifying trade rules and provisions in the WTO Trade Facilitation Agreement that are corresponding to these indicators. And then the step 5 would be making the link with non-trade policies such as ICT, because actually gender issues are cross-cutting. And if you look at the provisions in the Trade Facilitation Agreement about e-customs procedures, members have taken the commitment to transform all their procedures into e-customs procedures. But actually we know that women have difficulties in accessing or working with internet. There are figures and studies made globally and regionally. So this is also why we need to also make the links with the other policies. The next slide, please. So that's for the indicators. This is work which is currently being done, so I cannot for the moment completely explain the results of this work, but the idea is to have some indicators ready by early 2021. So the second thing we can do for women entrepreneurs to support them in trade facilitation is to train them in trade rules. Actually, I think the lack of knowledge on trade rules is another trade facilitation cost. As part of the survey we did, we see that women entrepreneurs in the BBIN region have received training on tax and customs regulations for 53% of them. The average in South Asia is about 39%, so it's a bit above the average in South Asia overall. And their interest actually in following such training is quite high. It's about 70% of them. And the overall interest in following trainings on trade in general, on trade rules, is 80%. So I think the interest is very high. And also we've discovered that actually there is a gap in long-standing capacity building programs offered to women entrepreneurs internationally and regionally. So for this reason, the WTO has been working on a dedicated program for women entrepreneurs. And we will be launching this new training program on trade rules in the early 2021. And one last point about what can be done to support women in trade facilitation is better knowledge about what women are facing. I mentioned that earlier, but actually I think there need to be a two-way street between governments and women entrepreneurs associations. And actually this new WTO training program, one of the aim of this program is also to develop the advocacy capacity of women entrepreneurs. Can you go to the next slide, please? Oh, sorry. Yes, sorry, I forgot. There is also one more point. One more point to help women is obviously involve customs officials, and governments also need to invest in female officials, not just hiring more women. This is not enough. There need to be a specific focus on female border and customs officials. That is to say, their skills, their technical skills need to be developed. And especially if they are more skilled, then they could also get access to more leadership positions. So other things can be done. They can be integrated in specific roles, so specific roles can be created for them. They are also female customs officers. They are also agents of trust in the institution, because often what we found is that women traders, they don't really trust the system and the institution. So I think this element of trust is very important. They also could have a very important role as trainers. So the trainer program would be quite also important. And also, of course, you know, governments need to understand how many women work in customs agencies and at border posts to be able to adapt all these different policies. Another aspect of this work would be to involve women entrepreneurs directly with border agencies and officers. So again, there is this trust issue, and there could be some platforms created to regroup customs institutions and agents and women traders. These forums where they could, like, you know, talk to each other, or where women could report any misconducts or actually good conducts as well. And a last point on this would be to train male customs officials. The World Customs Organization has created this program, this gender bias program for customs officials, and actually I think this is quite the work they do. It's quite effective. So also, you know, this can be used by all the different stakeholders. Could you go to the next slide, please? Just in conclusion, I just want to explain also what's happening in the WTO recently. So in addition to these trade facilitation indicators that I've been working on recently, also this issue can be raised in the new WTO informal working group on trade and gender. So this informal working group has been established very recently in September this year, and it is composed of 127 WTO members and observers. I gave you, if you are curious, to go and see the official document establishing the working group. I gave you the reference. It's open to everybody. And actually, the first meeting will be on 10 December. So I will be working with members, to make this, to make the work of the informal group move forward. And I would be very happy to be able to invite any experts and stakeholders to talk to this group, because they are very, the group of these people, of these members, they are very active, dynamic, and they really want to move forward on this issue of trade and gender. And with this, I will finish my presentation. Thank you very much.
Thank you, ANOUSH, for this very comprehensive, very informative presentation. All I would say at this point of time, couple of things, very briefly. First, we should not look at this issue or subject as another kind of non-tariff barrier. And I'll end there. I mean, I'm sure some of you understood what I'm trying to say. Secondly, I see that there are a lot of synergies between the work that the WTO is doing and the work that we are doing. And we'll be very happy to take forward those synergies further. So what I propose that sometime soon, we're going to have a separate meeting with ANOUSH on how we exchange our notes, information, including the draft report that we have prepared, to see to it that how we can take forward those synergies. So with these brief remarks, let me now request Mrs. RUMMANA for her presentation in about 12 minutes. So over to you, madam. Shiftis?
We have unmuted her.
You just share the screen.
Yeah, I would like to do the presentation, slide changing myself.
Sorry,
it's
you
okay
are going
with you.
yourself. Okay.
Yeah, yeah. If it's okay with you.
Yeah, of course. Yes, please.
Okay, greetings from Dhaka. My presentation is based on the viewpoint paper that I have submitted earlier, titled Facilitating Trade for Economic Empowerment of Women Entrepreneurs in Bangladesh, Identification of Barriers and Enhancing Opportunities Through Gender-Sensitive Measures. Yes, next slide, please. One silver lining of this global pandemic is a lesson for the SMEs that sustainability is the only option left for them. SMEs are the backbone of the economy of Bangladesh, and women are largely engaged in SMEs as it helps them to perform the dual roles of women as a homemaker and as a business person as well. Trade facilitation improves economic status and empowers women's engagement in SMEs through poverty reduction and profitability. Bangladesh can specially use the provisions under WTO's Trade Facilitating Agreement. In Bangladesh, only 10% women are engaged in trade, according to the Economic Census of 2030. Gender-specific constraints and importance of gender sensitivity still remains largely unexplored. Huge reforms are needed in the gender impact and services like customs and border management, logistics services, trade infrastructure and transportation, and trade-related policies. But little attempt has been made to identify and address the needs of women in trade. Cross-border trade of goods and issues that hinder women's greater participation in case of Bangladesh. Low awareness of women due to lack of insufficient information, difficulties in accessing cross-border markets, complex tax procedures. Others include weak domestic demand, limited connection to market opportunities abroad, difficulties in meeting international health, safety, and other standards, and limited bargaining power, absence of lowering tariffs on imported products. Formal and informal trade across borders from Bangladesh takes place largely by road. Formal trade takes place through 49 land customs stations, LCCs, and in 2 integrated checkposts and border huts, and there is always informal trade. Formal trade through border huts between Bangladesh and India and participation of women. In border huts, traders are issued legal permits to trade once or twice a week with a maximum of 50 vendors from each country, estimated value of purchase of which is maximum of $200 for a particular day in respective currency. The border villages are most prosperous by improved market access for their goods. Women's participation is noticeable and the interest among the local women to take part in huts has risen significantly. But the following set of challenges need to be addressed properly. The infrastructure deficit is number 1. The physical connectivity to the border huts is poor and mobile and internet connectivity is extremely poor in some cases. The access roads are narrow and more worse during monsoon. Most huts do not have separate toilets and other services for women. The banking facilities are either poor or non-existent in some cases. Predominance of male officials supervising the functioning of the huts. Informal trade takes place along the long and porous borders because the transaction costs of trading formally are higher due to the costly and quite complex trade procedures. Women residing in the border area are involved in formal cross-border trade through the huts. They carry and transport goods for exporters and importers. They travel frequently as passengers by rickshaws, make several daily trips for carrying goods between the two countries. Often goods are carried as head loads by women. They often are engaged in suitcase trade to participate in exhibitions or to sell their goods to retailers or wholesalers across the border. Informal traders are likely to shift to formal channels if the impediments of trading formally are reduced. Now I come to the most important part of my presentation. Here I have suggested some measures measures like because to address the challenges faced by women, it is necessary to undertake extensive gender-sensitive trade facilitation measures. Policymakers should ensure that women's cross-border trading is possible and profitable for them to enter into and remain engaged in business successfully. My first suggestion is gender mainstreaming in the implementation of cross-border trade. bilateral, multilateral, regional, and gender responsive implementation of trade facilitating agreement. How this could be done, might be done. Direct funds from development partners towards assisting women to comply with customs to take the advantage of preferential trade agreements, include women in consultative processes, increase the number of women members in all government committees. Ministry of Women and Children Affairs and Ministry of Commerce of the Government of Bangladesh would play the main role in adopting and implementing this measure. Next is enhancing participation of women in land LCSs and ICPs. We need women-friendly border crossing points, like arranging uninterrupted electricity, mobile network, discounted warehousing, and storage facilities for women, digitizing the processes and introduce one-stop service centers, arranging separate toilets and other common areas for women, developing infrastructure like better roads, etc. Local government engineering department, power development board, and mobile service providers would play the vital role in implementing and adopting this measure. Next is awareness building and information dissemination activities targeting women, like arranging training and sensitization of border level government agents and officials, arranging exclusive help and monitoring desk for women, establishing efficient and helpful banking and foreign exchange facilities. Ministry of Finance, Ministry of Information and Technology, women chambers and associations, and different booths and branches of public and commercial banks would play the main role in adopting and implementing this measure. Marketing and support services to women for accessing cross-border markets. Arrange positive and periodic media campaigns, disseminate readily available information, booklets and pamphlets, establish women help and monitoring desk in relevant government offices. Ministry of Information Technology, women chambers and other associations would be the main key performers. Participation of gender disaggregated database. This is very important. Integrate e-commerce among different executing agencies. Collect gender disaggregated data for different quantitative parameters by government agencies. Collect qualitative information regularly via consultative dialogues between authorities responsible for trade facilitation and women's business association and groups. Bangladesh Bureau of Statistics, chambers and association would play a vital role in adopting and implementing this measure. Enhance participation of women in border huts. We have to adopt gender affirmative actions for hut licenses, this is very important. So we have approval of a quota for licenses for women and as vendor and vendee by the hut management committee for 1 year only. There should be a gap of 1 year before the successful applicants can reapply for licenses. The hut management committee would play the vital role in adopting and implementing this measure. We need transparency in issuing hut licenses by following a rotational entry procedure to enable greater number of women to take part in the huts, make information readily available for the application process through mobile text, notice board at the Poroshava offices, etc. Abolish discretion in the approval process and make selection transparent like random drawing lots or lottery. Again, hut management committee would be the vital role player in this regard. Gender responsive infrastructure includes improved communication network, regular maintenance of access roads, get desk works done by preferred by women preferably by women officials, arrange efficient banking and foreign exchange facilities, and suitable sitting areas, separate toilets for women with regular water supply. Local government engineering department, hut management committee, power development board, and different booth and branches of public and commercial banks would play the vital role in adopting and implementing this measure. Maintaining gender disaggregated database, creating a computerized and regularly updated gender disaggregated database on vendors, vendees, and transactions conducted at the hut. Again, Bangladesh Bureau of Statistics would play the vital role. Adapting gender responsive trade and tariff policies. Here, I have only considered the export and import policy. Export policies would provide provisions like increase number of women participation in national and international trade fairs, create regular trade fairs activities throughout the country, provide facilities for exporting the products of women entrepreneurs, disseminate information on export related matters, introduce specific provisions for women entrepreneurs, export opportunities, and import subsidies in different sectors like leather, boutiques, and beauty, where these are the sectors where most Bangladeshi women are engaged in. Export Promotion Bureau, small medium enterprises, Enterprise Foundation, NASIB, different chambers would play the vital role in adapting and implementing this measure. Next is import policy. Women entrepreneurs need to import raw materials, machineries, and technology. So the following provisions should be included in import policy, like providing lower tariff for imports generally used in services where women participation is predominant, abolish the system of import and export registration, open an information window for women traders in the Department of Imports and Exports within the Ministry of Commerce, engage a custom official in each port of clearance to handle women importers' cases on priority basis, develop a system that follows waiver of pre-shipment inspection requirement for women-owned businesses. Export Promotion Bureau, Small Medium Enterprise Foundation, Ministry of Commerce and Ministry of Industry would be the vital role player in adopting and implementing this measure. Now, the way forward. Make formal trade through the land borders more facilitative and less cumbersome for women. Strengthen and increase the presence of border huts at strategic points to normalize cross-border trade with India and Myanmar. Collect more data and information on the quantum and nature of informal trade and the extent of women's participation. Current studies on informal trade in South Asia, including the BBIN, are limited in scope. So you have to expand the knowledge base on prevailing situation that would help policymakers in adopting more targeted measures. In conclusion, I would like to say that reaping the best advantage from trade facilitation measures is not just a single job for the government or the NGOs or the chambers or the women entrepreneurs. It is a holistic approach, so we need these three agents work together in a single platform. Like the government will develop standards, develop policies, enforce those standards and policies, and coordinate among different government agencies. The NGOs, chambers, and private enterprises would create public awareness by their research, publications, and advocacy programs. And the women traders would be responsible for trading practices and raise voices to avail services they need. Only then we could reap the best result of trade facilitation for women. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. RUMMANA, for this very structured presentation in terms of what is to be done, why and how they have to be done, and who is going to do them. So it will depend on our work on how we take forward this agenda, not just in Bangladesh but also in other countries, in our neighboring countries. I'll just say a couple of things before I go to the next speaker. One is that it can't be done by one single agency, whether it is government or non-government. There has to be a whole of government approach, and I would say whole of government plus approach. Unless that approach is taken, it will be. And the last point in your slides is the gender measures for trade facilitation. That, I think, replacing dimensions to measures, I think it is going to give us more positive, more direct approach to this subject. Yeah. And my second point is that we'll be happy to know that other than this project, we are also working on border huts. India-Bangladesh border huts, again supported by the Foreign Commonwealth and Development Organization of the United Kingdom. And I will be happy to send you our reports and other things. We are also doing a series of webinars on border huts. Some of you may be receiving those information. So with that, let me go to the next speaker. There is a slight change I propose with due apologies in the order because I've just been informed that by my colleagues that Mrs. Pradhan want to make a very short 2-slide presentation so that she can place her thought process much more clearly to all of us. And as some kind of a head of this webinar family, I would first request Mrs. Pradhan for her brief presentation in about 7-8 minutes, madam. Then I would come to Mrs. Ahmed. My apologies to Mrs. Ahmed for this slight change in the order. So over to you, Mrs. Pradhan.
Thank you, BIPUL. Actually,
Yes.
it's not two. I just wanted to show the 2 slides, but I have made my notes. And since I was asked not to avoid PowerPoint presentation, I didn't prepare a PowerPoint. So I have my notes. So I'll be as brief as possible. And actually, I would first like to thank the CUTS and the organizers for giving me this opportunity to share my paper. And it is based on the viewpoint paper. What I would like to do is really, try to concentrate more on the empowerment of women and how trade can be promoted, promote women in trade through their empowerment. So which really comes from the demand side of the involvement of women in trade. And I base this mainly on the experiences of women and also examine whether involving women, does that matter and does it really affect the development outcomes, and how would it improve the trade, growth of trade with women's involvement. So what I would like to do is to really see how the whole concept of empowerment and gender equality has been recognized and has been set as a goal and priority for most of the development interventions, because with the belief that greater involvement of women and empowerment of women would result in some development outcomes, which could be poverty reduction or economic growth or trade promotion or whatever, or even health and that kind of things. So, and increasingly, the economic empowerment and gender equality are taken both as a goal and as well as a precondition for achieving the sustainable development, economic growth, and poverty reduction. And the underlying assumption is that socio-economic is the socio-economic perspective, which means that equal distribution of socio-economic factors such as education, income, access to resources or assets, and representation or in the decision-making position will result in empowerment and hence the desired result in the development outcomes. And rarely does the national or international intervention aim at enhancement of women's empowerment, addressing the structural and exclusionary factors that and the processes that result on unequal outcome, even while providing the equal distribution or the opportunities for women. So there are structural factors. So I would like to address on that. And my main concern is that the way in the development, how the perception and the underlying assumption is used in the economic empowerment and how gender equality is viewed and understood and how it is being implemented. So that is one of my main concerns. And so in this presentation, what I would like to do is really highlight on the feminist perspective of empowerment as differentiated from the socio-economic and the appropriateness of the effectiveness of the conventional approach and the measurement variables used as indicators of empowerment in most development intervention programs. So in doing so, I would like to uh, provide a conceptual perspective of aspects of empowerment. One as socio-economic, and the other is agency, really from the women's measuring women's potential and the capability functioning of women in combating the adversity, socio-economic or gender adversities that affect women, and how women as members, households and families are use strategies to maximize income, family and family well-being. We need to draw really factors that best represent or reflect women's exercise of agency from their empirical experiences of daily life, which is item rather than taking only socio-economic factors. And as we have seen that in development, in the development, really, no matter how equal opportunities that you provide to the women or the facilities that you provide, still the outcome becomes unequal. So in fact, the whole concept of women's empowerment in development literature has been influenced by feminist thinking of the need to enable women to overcome those systemic sources of subordination and its implications on intervention strategies to enhance those powers and capabilities of women and its sources to effect change. Although this has been recognized in the development literature um, as an important factor in affecting social, economic, and demographic changes in bringing about gender equality, in practice, the structural sources of subordination have yet to be addressed. For instance, it was in 1995, the Fourth World Conference on Women in Beijing, that really underlined the importance of taking women's gender equality from the structural perspective, but that has not been really followed through. And also the indicators that has been introduced, like the GDI, gender development indicators, or human development or the gender empowerment indicators, they are still based on the socio-economic, which measures the life expectancy, education, the differential achievements of men and women in the life expectation or the education and the income of the people. So that these are some of the factors that is mainly added, but the structural factors which really constrain women in coming out of the house, or the gender factors, the subordination of women has not been addressed. So and when I say the agency aspect from a feminist perspective, that which needs to be addressed is to bring out the human potential of the ability of subordinate groups, and in our case it is the women, to act in a way that resists the socio cultural and economic forces of adversities that expose them to health, physical, mental, or economic, and so on. And this has yet to come about, and we have not really addressed these factors. Can you hear me? Yeah.
Yes, yes.
Okay.
3 more minutes.
Okay. What we need to really do is progress to see the progress in what we have seen today is the progress in gender inequality and gender constraints in women's participation in development, as it is seen as a lack of factors such as education, or as a distributional issues rather than structural. So I want to really bring this, and I'm saying this, and then this is based on our experience in Nepal, where paid and unpaid work and women's empowerment, there's the relationship between paid and unpaid work, women's empowerment, and development outcomes from the experience of Nepal. And Nepal we have gone through this experience. I have had experience at least from at least 20 to 25 years. And I would like to draw your attention on how women's participation and their household strategies for maximization of income and family welfare can influence development outcomes, such as using human development indicators or human poverty indicators. and women play a significant role in household strategy in maximizing its income by balancing inside unpaid and outside paid work, oftentimes under the conditions of social or gender norms for the maximization of household income and welfare of its members. So I use the national income data, uh, economic data from labor force participation that has been conducted for 3 rounds and supplemented by other sources of income, and we have found that Nepal has gone through actually unprecedented social, economic and political changes in the last 20-25 years, with a decade-long bloody war between the state and Maoist, and that which devastated the economy, the failure to create employment opportunities, driving the country to a virtual remittance economy. And this is reflected on low growth of Nepalese economy, which is on average is like 3.4%, fluctuating between 0 to 6% growth, and instability and poor performance of the economy. So there has not really been much economic development in the country. And similarly, industrial and agriculture sector grew only at an average rate of 2.7 to and 2.9% respectively. Over the 12 years, you can see this slackening in the growth of the economy. The services.
Change the slides, Vinaji.
Sorry?
We can't see those other 2 slides. You have to,
I'll come to that. I'll come to that.
no, you have to conclude now.
Yeah.
Already. Yeah, please.
Okay. You know, and then the tourism is the only sector that has grown at a steady rate of 6%. And so but the whole point is that despite this poor performance in the economy, the socio-economic indicators of development, you know, like poverty, the income, the health, nutrition, all have improved. And that improvement is, what I'm saying is that, you know, this is due to the way the women have come out in the economy, and that I attribute that as one of the fundamental factors that has helped the women to the economy to achieve its socio-economic development. So economic growth as such has really fallen, the agriculture and the manufacturing, but the socio-economic indicators of poverty, health, all has increased. And so among all this, what has happened is that, you know, within this span of 20 years, women have emerged as a powerful source or powerful contributors to the economy. And so one is that they are participating much more, and they've come out both working in the paid sector, paid work as well as unpaid work. And
Vinaji, conclude, please.
Well, I have some. Okay, so what I wanted to show in the what I wanted to show is the 2 slides now. Can you show the 2 slides?
So please, next slide.
Next slide. Yeah, next slide. Next. Yeah, this is the aspect of the other one. Aspect of empowerment that I was talking about. In the development, you have this aspect is socio-economic, which is mainly, you know, improving the education, health, and you know, access to resources and all that. That is what is being emphasized. Whereas the agency aspect of the human potential of what activities what actions that women can take, that is not being still addressed. So if women, and what I'm trying to show is that in Nepal, because the socio-economic indicators have improved significantly, and that is mainly due to the fact that women are coming up as agents for participating in the labor force. They are doing both in taking up jobs in formal, informal sectors, as well as migration and selling their unpaid work, which they would have done in unpaid work at home, that is being marketed in the international market. And that has actually helped to improve the human development indicators and poverty indicators. Next. Okay, next slide, please. So the kind of contribution that women are making is this, like 66% of the contribution, that is in terms of the time that devote to these sectors, 4 sectors, household sector, 66%, and in addition to the contribution they make through the unpaid work, they are also making almost equally participating in the productive sectors, like formal and informal market sectors, as well as the subsistence sectors. So this is the kind of contribution that women are making. You can close that. And so what is actually, what I'm trying to say is that now women are also, I've seen to participate significantly in the enterprise development, and so in the enterprise development, so it accounts for, like, in the country 60 to 80% of the total value of the Nepal's industrial production, 80% of the employment, and 70% of the value of all exports. And females participation in micro enterprise is close to male participation, on at the rate of like 46%. So that's the kind of and most of the work, the home-based workers are women. 85% of the workers are home-based, women in the home-based workers. While the female participant labor market and salaried wage, they are also migrating and also taking part. So one of the things that women are quite slow is in the trade sector, where their participation has been quite negligible. And that is one of the main factors that I account, is that in the trade policies and program, gender issues play little or no attention of the reproductive roles of women and the kinds of contribution that they make. And their work is still not valued.
Thank you.
The second is that trade policies do not really employ the employment or production effect, which means that looking into the sectors that employ women and where women participate the most, or making or facilitating women's participation in productive sectors of the exportable goods and the products. So, and then second, and the third factor which actually discourages women in trade is that it is very difficult with the liberalization of the trade policies. It is difficult for women to really compete with the goods that come, the cheap goods that comes in. And then the fourth is that trade operates and concentrates in productive sectors, whereas the women are concentrating on the reproductive sectors, and which is completely ignored. And I think and women really balance their paid and unpaid work in order to maximize their income. And this has not been taken into account in the trade policies at all. So at the policy implication, I draw 3 more.
Thank you, Vinaji.
Okay.
Thank you. So let me now come to the next speaker. I think we are running late, and that's why I have to stop Vinaji. Of course, she has written this paper, and we have taken into account all the points that she has made. So let me now request Mrs. Ahmed for her thoughts. 8 minutes, please.
Thank you so much. Let me first thank BIPUL Chatterjee and CARDS for speaking about gender dimensions of trade facilitation in the BBIN sub-region. Because we all know that, especially in this COVID time, that how important trade facilitation are and how important it is around, especially in this BBIN BBIN region, because many even essential commodities prices has increased within the country because goods could not be imported. So I'll just go with recapturing about the BBIN trade facilitation and the reason, because we all know that in South Asia, which is one of the fastest growing region in the world, and here most important country, Bangladesh, Bhutan, India, Nepal, their initiatives are important because they need to improve their economic cooperation and connectivity among the member countries. And it was actually established to expedite measures to enhance cross-border trade and interconnectivity in South Asia. So a gender analysis is especially important for the BBIN region for three key reasons. So first is, as we know, that WTO's TFA, Trade Facilitation Agreement, contains provisions for expediting the movement, release and clearance of goods, including the goods in transit. So how these women traders might effectively participate in and benefit from TFA technical assistance and capacity building measures is an important factor for further consideration. Secondly, the emphasis on gender dimensions in trade facilitations assumes even greater significance in the context of the host of initiatives that most South Asian countries have unveiled in recent years to promote women entrepreneurship, along with talk of forming a SARC convention or promotion women entrepreneurship. In fact, when we saw that many men or the earning members of the family lost jobs, how important women entrepreneurs are, that we could understand or we can identify during this time. Thirdly, the sub-regional integration in South Asia between Bangladesh, Bhutan, India, and Nepal has assumed considerable importance in 2015. But what is happening with the motor vehicle agreement? Trade facilitation is the core of this agreement, with the objective to allow a smooth, seamless, and predictable movement of passengers and cargo in the sub-region. But is it happening or not happening? There's a big question mark. So there are challenges, especially for the women entrepreneurs. And like any other region, women in the BBIN have lower access to productive resources, and everyone, even the presenters and speakers, has spoke about the access to finance. Even in this COVID situation where they need a low rate of interest access to finance, they are not getting. The government has given stimulus packages, but is there anything for the women entrepreneurs? Our traders who need to go beyond suitcase businesses and need a sufficient amount of money when she gets order from the neighboring countries, does she have enough capital or working capital to do her business? There is a big question. So similarly, poor infrastructure, which everyone spoke about, and management of traders and ports, which really affects women traders and entrepreneurs. And in Bangladesh, female entrepreneurs point to corruption and poor infrastructure, which really hindrance. And it actually, women don't want to come into corruption. They are mothers. They are always teaching their children not to get involved in corruption. So which they preach, they don't want to bring it into practices. So this is a crucial part to see that the borders are corruption free. And despite having proper documentation, women often face harassment and have to pay bribes in the borders. So in addition, the cumbersome trade procedures and documentary requirements, as well as customs and related fees, impinge more heavily on women traders and entrepreneurs than on men. So many women also lack information about trade procedure, rules and regulations, and which we have seen in the ICRI paper. So are women vulnerable, or people or the society or the border area make them vulnerable? We have to see a gender friendly environment so that these women does not become vulnerable. So, and also during this COVID situation, we have seen
One
that
more minute.
okay, ICT skills are. So I would go with the recommendation that to enhance female producers and entrepreneurs, access to finance is important. Marketing support services are important. Greater access to business and trade association. They need to talk and facilitate this business relationship. Gender sensitization, training of border officials are important. Making information available through different platforms and in multiple languages, and providing ICT training are important. Improve road and transport facilities are important. Similarly, infrastructure at the border should be conducive. Trade facilitation initiatives that simplify, harmonize is very important. Women entrepreneurs, traders must be actively targeted in information campaigns. Lastly, I'd like to say that women entrepreneurs of Bangladesh, Nepal, India, and Bhutan, it is not only income generation. It is to lift the many millions people out of poverty. It is to bring economic empowerment. It is to go beyond LDC to mid income to high income countries. It is about equality. It is about empowerment. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mrs. Ahmed. Let me now go straight to Mrs. Giri for her thoughts on this subject in about 8 minutes, please. Over to you. Mrs. Manju Giri, can somebody unmute her? Yeah.
Can you hear me, sir?
Yes, please. Go ahead.
Okay. Good afternoon, moderator, sir, distinguished panelists, project partners. I'm very thankful to the CUTS International for making me a part of this event today. And in today's discussion, I would like to talk about the importance that the Bhutan government have been emphasizing on gender mainstreaming, and what are the type of recommendations that this project has come up with in order to create a gender responsive and women friendly environment to increase women's participation in the trade sector. Bhutan is predominantly a matriarchal society, and as per the Global Gender Gap Report 2020, the country already enjoys much closer gender parity in sectors like education and health. However, economic development is still an area where gender disparities remain visible. In Bhutan, the conscious inclusion of women in development dates back to the 5th five-year plan with the establishment of the National Women's Association of Bhutan in 1981. The NWAB aimed to empower women by encouraging women entrepreneurship, cooperatives, and economic community groups. It started training weavers and still has projects to support and help women take up economic activities. Accordingly, gender mainstreaming in the national plan was initiated with the 10th five-year plan, which was from 2008 to 2013. And the guidelines from the Gross National Happiness Commission stated that each sector should mainstream gender issues while formulating the 10th five-year plan and disaggregate data by gender wherever possible. And now in the current 12th five-year plan, 2018 to 2023, the National Gender Equality Policy has been approved and the action plan for gender equality is being drafted. This project, Gender Dimensions of Trade Facilitation, Evidence from Bhutan, came to us very timely when gender equality and social inclusion has become core development agenda in the country. Bhutan has been pursuing the idea of establishing Brand Bhutan as a strategy to promote Bhutanese products in the international market. Yet, women-owned enterprises in Bhutan are small, which uses underlying technologies have a narrower range of activities, and are perceived to be inferior to that of men. Women are underrepresented in many of the entrepreneurship programs and technical trainings for female youth. Women own only about 29% of the industries. Additionally, 71% of the care workforce comprises of women whose work is mostly unpaid and unvalued. The causes for less participation of women in economic activities are lack of access to opportunities for adequate trainings and capacity building, and existing barriers like broader socioeconomic inequalities, lack of knowledge about export standards and procedures, unavailability of financial resources, etc. This project included literature review of women entrepreneurs and exporters in Bhutan, and the field studies in 3 areas of Samduzongkhar, Phuntsholing, and Thimphu. The key recommendations that have come out of our study are as follows, and these are categorized in 5 broad themes. They are number 1 is the policy challenges, gender-specific components that is mainly in the form of schemes and incentives should be included in the trade, industrial, finance, and other economic policies, and policy making should be a consultative process. Officials working in institutions such as forest, trade and commerce department, banking sector, insurance companies, customs, they all need to be sensitized on gender issues. The National Commission for on Women and Children, NCWC, have been doing this kind of sensitization program already, but there has to be their focus has to be on these institutions which I have highlighted. A grievance redressal cell should be established in principal government offices and propagated widely. And government could initiate a special export promotion scheme for the export of forest and agricultural products, as many women entrepreneurs in Bhutan are engaged in production of these products. Building capacities, trainings and capacity buildings programs should be designed in local languages, and they should be trained, women entrepreneurs should be trained on financial management, bookkeeping, accounting, profit and loss calculations, etc. Trade procedures, rules and regulations, formalities and documentations, technical barriers to trade, sanitary and phytosanitary measures, and the use of digital technology, digital platforms should be encouraged. Inclusive financing, implementation of easy and accessible financial schemes for women, including provisions for collateral-free loans and discounted interest rates. There has to be gender-sensitive infrastructures in and around, in and around yeah. I'll just read out. I lost track of my. Affordable public transportation could be promoted for trade purposes. In the case of third-party transportation by trucks, charges should be based on weight basis, as the volume of business is low in most cases. And there has to be provision of electricity on subsidized rates. There has to be promotion of green energy technologies like solar dryers, cooling chambers, etc. Upgradation of infrastructures at the border points, and adopting gender-sensitive measures such as having a separate feeding room for the female staff, and also deploying female staff in order to deal with the women entrepreneurs, etc. The fifth point here is organizing of trade fairs, exposure trips to international trade fairs and trade-related conferences for women entrepreneurs to develop business linkages and provide subsidies and monetary incentives to participate in such events. Lastly, I would like to conclude, and I'm hopeful that our government and the relevant agencies, and also in all the 4 countries, if we are able to implement these project recommendations to create a gender responsive and women friendly environment, which in turn will promote women's participation in trade and businesses. And this effort also should be able to formalize women in the business sector who have been functioning informally. So this is the end of my presentation.
Thank you very much for presenting your thoughts, recommendations, and also for sticking to your allotted time. So let us now come to our last speaker of today's webinar, last but certainly not the least. So my question to Professor Rai Choudhury is that from the very beginning, from our college days, we were taught that trade is gender neutral. Even trade facilitation nowadays, even few years back, we used to hear that trade facilitation is gender neutral. So after hearing all this and also listening to these presentations, do you really think so? So over to you in about 8 minutes.
Okay, thanks, Mr. Chatterjee and Dr. Vidyadharan for giving me this opportunity to get involved in this very interesting project. In fact, I was looking at the theme papers. The publication also has come out well, and so I was really, it really enriched, my knowledge. I had very limited knowledge, and let me just, tell you that on these aspects, because as you know, it is not very well researched, at least in our part of the globe. And I think that why that is so is because we are already engulfed with so many problems that then looking at such a crucial problem is also that has taken a backseat. So that is my view on this. And so if you look at trade theory, of course, yes, but then if you look at the GIZ report of 2014, which I referred to in my theme paper also, that it is clearly written. I mean that we can look at it both ways. The one is that there are existing gender inequalities which are not letting us achieve the trade potential. That's what they have concentrated. That why if there is an existing gender inequality, then why it cannot let us to achieve our trade potential. That is one part. And second is, which I have concentrated in my paper, which is the other part. That is, if there is already lack of trade facilitation, can that contribute to gender inequality? And that's what I've got from my very basic. I cannot say with a lot of confidence that that's the best thing that could have been done. But from the things that I've done, that is giving me certain, I would say confidence in saying that given there is some lack of trade facilitation, it is even leading to a higher gender inequality. That is where I have ended my paper. So if that is what I take as a starting point, then all the points which can justify what I have said in a very macro sense in my paper, I have already gathered from all the esteemed speakers in this panel, and they have rightly pointed out that most of the things are because of the fact there is an insensitivity on the part of the various points in the value chain towards the requirement of the women entrepreneurs. And why only, I'll tell you why only women entrepreneurs. I have done some other work also, which I have referred to in my theme paper, and I have seen that even if you look at women workforce participation, we are looking at entrepreneurship. Before that, women workforce participation, then you will see there are various kinds of barriers. And I think South Asia is one region where women workforce participation is the lowest in the world. And I am very sorry to say that India is also a country where it is one of the lowest in the world. If you look at the women workforce participation. Now, many people will say why it is because India is now prospering, or maybe South Asian countries are prospering, so women don't need to work. But I don't look at it that way. What I still feel is that even when we are getting more economically developed, but somewhere our mindsets have not developed. Now, why I'm saying that is because if I look at my female counterpart as a competitor, that this person is competing with me then on the same kind of a job. So then I am trying by all means to undermine them. And it is not only because I am a competitor, but even when I'm a policymaker, even when I am running an NGO, everywhere it is entrenched. So my main point would be that first to get rid of this mindset. Now, if you can't get rid of this mindset, whatever policies you may take, however, we may strive to achieve that, it will never be achieved. So, but of course, we can take marginal steps. That's what we are coming to. Why we are doing this project? We are looking at marginal steps. we cannot take incremental steps, but we can take marginal steps. So I think in that view, okay, yes, these are the policies which will definitely make the participation of women more attractive in the trade value chain. So we are specifically speaking about trade value chain. So here, of course, they will go. Like I had, from the WTO, the madam who had made the presentation from WTO, it was heartening to note that there is a new committee and they're looking at making the border, at least the border should be, there should be more women officials who will take care of the needs of the women. That is very heartening to note. And I think that's a very, very important policy. Other than that, I think Madam RUMMANA had given a very good presentation on, how things are happening in Bangladesh and how Bangladesh has come up with so many policies which are making things more equal than it was before. So I think our focus should be on making things more equal than it was before, rather than eliminating it, because eliminating it means that the complete mindset has to change, and I don't see that mindset will change very in the near future. At least the things that are happening, I don't want to refer to them. So incremental change, very good. All the things have come out from the report, and I'm very happy that those things, if they are implemented rightfully, then definitely that will lead to increment marginal changes, and we will have a more equal society than we had before in terms of gender. So that's if you ask me in a nutshell, that is my view about the whole thing.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. I would say 2 or 3 points after hearing all of you. I think this incremental change or marginal change is very, very important. This is a subject which is so under-researched, and as Professor CHOUDHURI has rightly pointed out, and rightly done in his paper as well, which we are going to send that whole compendium to all of you. Unless we go back to the basics and look and create a basic framework for analysis, it's not going to take us forward much. I mean, let me put it this way. When I look at Alfred Marshall's Principles of Economics, for example, it seems, it always seems to me that, it is so basic. But at that point of time, think about that. It was a starting point. So we have made a starting point, and I'm sure that as we move forward in partnership with all of you, including with WTO and other agencies, I see that there is one representative from the Global Alliance for Trade Facilitation of the World Economic Forum. She is also participating in today's webinar. So we should have a positive agenda for the gender measures for trade facilitation, or gender dimensions, the gender aspects of trade facilitation. So that's one point. And my take on another very important point, which has also come in some of other presentations, is that in order to have women's empowerment, first, I think it is much more important to sensitize the main folks of the society. And this is not just for trade, this is for many other. And this is also the experience which we have gathered from our very grassroots level work in various districts of southern Rajasthan, very traditional conservative society. We have to first sensitize the main folk of the society on various on the positive aspects of women empowerment, and then only slowly things change. And we have been working there since 1990, and over the last 3 years we have made a number of incremental progress in terms of women's education, health, and many even economic empowerment. So with that, we have already almost there. It's 1 minute to go, so I'm not going to open the floor. We have other things to do. Today is a Friday. And also the fact that I don't know how to handle that. So my request would be, the final thing would be to give the floor to ANOUSH for her thoughts with a question that, do you think that how useful would be this kind of work for the work that WTO Secretariat is doing, and also the informal working group is doing on gender and trade, and how can we work together in future? So over to you, ANOUSH, in about a couple of minutes.
Thank you. So I just wanted to make clear that what I mentioned when I mentioned the creation of the informal working group, it's not a committee. It's an informal working group on trade and gender, and it's just a group of 127 members that have established this informal group. So it's not something which is involved all the membership of the WTO, but at least we have 2/3 of the members. So I just wanted to make that clear first of all. And again, as part of the work of this informal working group, one of the important aspects for the work of the members here would be to have access to this kind of input, of reports, of expertise, to also help them understand better what's happening in the different regions, what's happening in different countries, and so that they can integrate that into the work of the working group that they have established. So I think this is going to be a very important way of for us to have a good collaboration. Another point which I want to make is about the changes in the mentalities. I mean, yes, of course, this is absolutely crucial and basis, but I think that the fact that we will have, or governments are working on policies to be implemented to favor women's economic empowerment and helping them integrating trade, that would be also the trigger of changing mentality. So I think it's kind of a virtuous circle. That is to say, the moment you do this kind of policies and the moment you implement them, then that will have also an impact on this aspect, because changing mentalities, it can take, it's very, very hard. So that was just my 2 points. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Just one clarification. I think when BIBEK said committee, he meant with small c, not the capital C. I can understand the sensitivity after dealing with WTO for almost 25 years. Committee with capital C is a completely different thing. And if we talk about committee on trade and gender, then some country, I'm not going to take any name, they are going to pounce on her. So that's the point, which is it's a body with small b. Let's put it that way. And this nomenclatures are very, very tricky sometimes in the WTO context. Now, before I conclude, I could see that Mrs. Cecil Fruman from the World Bank, the regional director of South Asia on regional integration, director of South Asia on regional integration. So may I request Mrs. Fruman for any thoughts from you on this subject? We'll be very grateful.
So thank you very much. I wasn't at all prepared to come in, but thank you for the opportunity. This is a topic that is very, very core to our agenda. And as you know, we do collaborate very closely with CUTS on trade facilitation, transport, and trade policies. So I'm delighted to see so much attention brought to this. I thought the conversation was very enriching, and we certainly look forward to continuing to work with you on these topics. Thank you very much.
So thank you very much. And I see that it's already 4 minutes past 4. We started about a minute late. So we are not that late. We are more or less on time. And that is one of the major factors of competitiveness. So with that, so unless, because time also means cost, so we have to be more competitive in our work as well. So with that, let me thank all of you once again for your participation, not just for your time. What we are going to do, we are going to prepare a short report of this webinar and send it across. And we are also going to send you the, not just the compendium which we released yesterday. Some of you have received it, some of you may not have received it. So we are going to send it across to all of you. And also an edited video of this webinar, so that it can refer it for future work. So with that, let me once again thank all of you. And ANOUSH, we're going to have some discussion with you later on how to have much more synergy on each other's work. So thank you, and have a nice weekend. Take care, stay safe. Thank you. And we're going to send the PowerPoint presentations as well. The 2 or 3 PowerPoint presentations that we have. Thank you very much.